Continuing with our video sit-downs with the candidates, Drew MacEwen, incumbent Republican for 35th District State Representative, position 2. I always get them backwards, but you're 2. Drew, people know you, but let's just remind everybody about who you are and why you're seeking re-election.
Sure. Real quick on my background, the Navy brought me out here in the early mid-90s. I was a submariner in the nuclear program. Fell in love with this state and have enjoyed being here both as a military individual and as a civilian. And I chose to make this my permanent home. And I'm in the business field. I've gotten myself involved in a number of different businesses that I actively manage, and that's kept me grounded. I've got to live with the consequences of what happens in Olympia, so that gives me a unique perspective on what we do down there and how that impacts the day-to-day life of what's going on for employers and employees. I'm running for re-election for the same reasons I ran in 2012, and that is make sure we have a world-class K-12 education, that we have a strong economy, and that we keep state government accountable and make sure we have the most efficient state government when it comes to the use of the taxpayers' dollars. And I've had bills signed into law in all 3 of those categories, but our work isn't done, and we've got more to do. And I look forward to returning to Olympia in January and continuing to do that work.
As we're talking about schools, Drew, school funding, property taxes, everybody get that sticker shock on their property tax statement. I know that there's a fix coming, but can you kind of put it in your words where you lie on this whole school funding?
Yeah, so as we know, the McCleary issue has been the yoke around the neck of the legislature here for since before I came into office, actually, just prior to that. And the gist of the court's ruling in that issue of whether or not we were adequately funding K-12 education was that there was an over-reliance on local dollars for basic education. And to make that fix, it wasn't just about increasing funding. It was about shifting where is that funding coming from. And so you had property-rich districts that had significantly more resources because of their property valuations, and they were able to provide a higher level of education than other parts of the state, such as the 35th District, which generally isn't as property rich. And so it was looking at leveling that playing field and removing the overburden that happens then on districts such as this one, where the property values maybe aren't as high, certainly aren't as high as they are on Mercer Island or Bellevue, and being able to level that playing field and not hurt other districts, but bring everybody up so that we're all on a level playing field. That was the intent of the fix that was passed on a bipartisan basis in the legislature last year. And what it does is it shifts more to a state property tax portion in funding K-12 education, and ultimately caps and lowers what is collected at the local level for basic education. The unique thing because of when the law got passed, we weren't able to make the adjustments that it would all go into effect right away. And so there's a little bit of an overlap here. And so unfortunately what has happened, and we knew this when the fix was passed, but again, because of the way the tax structures are, we couldn't make the fix happen immediately, and so there was this overlap. And so what's happened is you've seen the increase on the state property tax portion, but the local level hasn't decreased yet. It does for next calendar year, but that's not this year as it was passed when we did this last summer. And so what we're seeing is a higher property tax burden right now across the state, and but next year your local property tax level will be capped at $1.50 on the mill rate, and that has a significant impact then. And what most property taxpayers will see is a decrease in their state and on their overall property tax bill. So that's next year. That doesn't fix this year, and we had a proposal in the legislature to make that happen this year, because we could do it now this year when we were in session, but that did not gain the support of the majority party, and that was deferred until next year. And so I'm a property taxpayer too. I don't like to see that significant increase, but again, I'd go back to the good news is it goes down next year.
So part of that is teacher salaries, and there's been some talk about inequity in the formula that was created to regionalize the salaries. And I know there has been sort of a fix to that, but is there something else in the works?
I think it's going to, because this has not been fully implemented yet, that we're going to continue to see possibly some issues that were unforeseen, and we'll adjust fire and we'll make those fixes as we go. One of those regionalization issues was North Mason versus Kitsap, and they had a 12% differential. So North Mason teachers under this new proposal were getting 12% less than their counterparts in Kitsap. We've fixed that. Not all the way, but we've lowered that to a 6% differential, which is much more palatable to those that find themselves in that situation. There's a few districts throughout the state where this occurred, and we've capped that what that differential can be. So that's an improvement on it. And again, as things get fully implemented on the McCleary level, with the bipartisan fix that was done, I do believe there'll probably be some other issues that are going to come up that we're going to have to address, and we will. There's a bipartisan agreement on making sure that we do this fairly and adequately.
School safety, on the topic of schools. Some talk out there about arming teachers.
Right.
I'm not going to ask you whether you are or you're against or where your position is, but what is your position on what we can do to make sure the kids are safe?
Yeah, there isn't an easy answer to this. We have some society issues across our nation that there isn't the legislature that's going to fix, and it comes back to we need to strengthen our families, and that's we as a society, not a legislature or a Congress is going to do that, and that at the end of the day is what's going to cure, I believe, a lot of the ills that we have in our society today. But what can we do? I do believe that we can look at safety measures within schools. I would support using the capital budget to help school districts fund improvements to ensure their buildings are safe with upgrades that may be recommended by those that are experts in that field of how you can secure a building and make it adequate and make it safe. I certainly support using the capital budget to do that. But I will address the issue that you bring up with teachers and whether or not to arm them. I personally believe that that's a decision at a local level should be made, should not be a top-down mandate from the state. If a local community chooses to go in that direction, that should be their decision and not the state legislatures.
Shouldn't the teachers have a say in that? I mean, you're not going to force somebody to carry a gun if they don't want to carry a gun.
Not at all.
I mean, yeah, okay.
Yeah, teachers. Yeah, when I say the local level should make that decision, and that includes the teachers most certainly.
Let's talk a little bit about homelessness. This kind of goes along with the social issues that you mentioned. What do you think we should do about the homeless problem we have?
I think there's two things here that tend to overlap on this issue. We get a huge overshadowing from the Seattle metropolitan area and the issues going on there versus what happens in communities such as Shelton or even Bremerton, etc. At the end of the day, there's 2 points I'll make. We need a strong economy that benefits all of Washington, not just specific areas of the state, and so that the jobs are there and people have that opportunity to move forward. On the same hand, there are people that cannot help themselves, and I believe we have a moral responsibility to ensure that those people receive the help they need. And I think we have a group that's in the middle there that have been enabled through policies that are trying to help those that cannot help themselves, and others have taken advantage of that. And we need to find a way to separate those two segments. And again, a lot of that lies at the local level. We also, though, need to look at why is housing becoming unaffordable? And this is an easy statistic to point out because it says what's going on in Seattle. Over the last 10 years, for every 84 people who have moved into the metro area, one home has been built. Economics 101 says that's not going to make things affordable. Let's look, though, at our level here that I represent in the 35th District, and because of land use policies, the Growth Management Act, we have a number of restrictions that make it either prohibitive or cost prohibitive to build affordable housing. And when I say affordable housing, I'm talking about everything from your multifamily units to your middle income individuals that to have a reasonable house that they're able to afford and to purchase. We have restricted what you can and cannot do so significantly in this state with land that it becomes unaffordable. There are areas in Thurston County that I represent that look at before they even put a shovel into the ground, close to $30,000 in various permit fees. that does not make things affordable. And so we need to step back and look at what those root causes are so that we can build affordable housing and make it worthwhile to do so.
Let's talk about infrastructure for a minute. I mean, you've had a big role in recent funding for City of Shelton projects. What needs to be done here with the infrastructure?
Yeah, there's two things going on. We've, this is not only in this state but across the nation. We've seen a lack of attention to our overall infrastructure. I think we've done a little bit better job in Washington than some other states have. Yes, at the Shelton level, there's because of technology changes, environmental changes. When I say environmental changes, I'm referring to environmental law that have required changes to systems that we use, and the Shelton sewer systems is a prime example of that. And through bipartisan efforts, we've gotten a significant amount of money to help change that infrastructure, bring it up to speed, and minimize the impact to ratepayers on that. And those that live in Shelton know how significant though the rate is when it comes to water and sewer. And these projects that we've gotten put into place here would have, had we not been able to get that funding, it would have exacerbated the problem even more. And so I'm a big believer in using the capital budget for these infrastructure projects and making sure we bring things up to where they need to be. Communities that are smaller, such as this area, just do not have the resources to be able to do that on their own. And if they did, it's a significant debt problem that they didn't incur for a number of years. And so the more that we can use the capital budget for those items, I'm all in favor for. And another great one that we're working on in this last capital budget, we got design money for using the Belfair sewer and extending that out to the Port of Bremerton and possibly even towards the city of Bremerton, which would add in more payers, which would lower. So you're broadening the base, lowering the rates for everybody, and making more use of that system. It would also allow for more businesses to come into the Port of Bremerton, and that's going to benefit Mason County and Kitsap County. So we got design money for that in this last capital budget, and now we're going to start to phase in the actual construction of that because it makes sense to do that before we do the Belfair Bypass. So yeah, there's a number of infrastructure projects. Again, I'm a big believer in using the capital budget for those. The long-term positive impacts are tremendous to the local communities that they serve.
You mentioned the Belfair Bypass, and there's still people in the north end here, Mason County, that it's not going to get built.
Right.
Isn't it? I mean, this is as close as it's ever been. Is that right?
That is correct.
So, is this going to happen? I guess is the question.
Our job right now is to make sure that it does. Yes, it was passed in the transportation budget from a year and a half, 2 years ago. It is in there. It's a staged process. If everything stays on time, the Belfair Bypass will open in 2025, which leads people to think, well, it's not going to happen because 2025 seems a long ways away. But what's happening right now is some of the redesign that needs to happen. Next year, they'll begin purchasing the right-of-ways that are needed in order to construct that. And then I think you start seeing dirt move, if I recall, probably by the end of next year, early 2020, where they actually see actual construction going on. But our job in the legislature is to hold the DOT's feet to the fire to make sure that this project stays a priority and gets done. So it's in there, it's in the queue. Nothing has changed as far as that is concerned. And again, we'll just stay on top of the DOT to make sure that that does in fact happen.
Let's talk a little bit, it's kind of, you talked about environment, but let's talk about environmental issues, something that's, is there something that's on the top of your list for protecting the environment, but still being able to develop what we have?
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, I mean, we're all for the environment. Nobody is against it. I think oftentimes what we see is a push to do something where it doesn't make economic sense yet, and that creates some serious heartburn for individuals and for businesses. So I believe that we can have a balance in the state that allows for business growth while protecting the environment. And frankly, I'd point to the manufacturing sector in this state. If you go back to 1990 to today, we've increased manufacturing production in the state of Washington by close to 250%. Our carbon emission levels are at the 1990 level, which are low. So we've increased production and we've lowered the carbon output. Businesses are doing the right thing in this state, and again, I'm all for protecting the environment and making sure that we have the right systems in place to allow for growth while maintaining that balance of protecting the environment.
Okay, Drew, the last thing, looking at the the last interview we were sitting in on. Briefly tell us why we should return you to Olympia.
Yep. I would look to my bipartisan track record. I've worked across the aisle through all 3 terms and have had legislation signed into law through those 6 years. And that's being a member in the minority party. That I look at that as a significant accomplishment. The 3 points I brought out: K-12 education, strong economy, and state government efficiencies. I'd point to 3 major bills I've had signed into law on all of those. On the K-12 side, I had a significant bipartisan bill passed last year that reformed our state testing. It didn't go as far as I wanted to, but sometimes you've got to make compromises to get something done. It was still a significant improvement on the state mandated tests that we have in the state. On the economy, did a major overhaul reform to labor and industries and how they treated contractors. That was a significant improvement in that area. I continue to work on B&O tax reform. That's a heavy lift. We don't have that one done yet, and I've had proposals in every year to change that system and make it more efficient and more fair. So we'll continue to work on that one. And then as far as state government efficiencies, had an overhaul to the state VA system. This was signed into law 2 years ago that expanded it but made it more efficient. So it didn't increase the amount of money needed, but yet it allowed to serve more people because we created efficiencies. Those are just 3 bills out of a dozen or so that I've had signed into law that I'd point to as an example of that. I serve in the leadership of my caucus, which gives this area even a stronger voice within the House of Representatives, and I look forward to continuing to do that work on behalf of the people, listening to what they have to say, what the concerns are. Doesn't mean we're always going to agree on everything, but I would point to also those that are supporting me. I'm endorsed not only by business groups, but also by labor groups. The state troopers, the walk cops, the state employees union, but I also have the support of the Association of Washington Business and NFIB. And educators. I was just endorsed by them last week. So those items transcend both sides of the political spectrum, and I think that's a testament to the track record that I've created in Olympia, and look forward to continuing and serving the people of the 35th District.
Thank you, Drew.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking some time.
My pleasure. Thanks, Dedrick.